Hello and welcome to the Let's Talk Leadership podcast, the platform where inspirational leaders from the tech, digital and business world share their insights, experiences and learnings. I'm your host, Sandra Patel, and I'm thrilled to bring you conversations with some of the brightest minds and most passionate leaders in the industry from across the world. Whether it's about navigating challenges, driving innovation, or building diverse and inclusive teams, this podcast is all about learning from the very best. Each episode is an opportunity to hear real stories of success, personal growth, and how our guests are giving back to the community. And it's also a chance for me to learn right alongside you. So get ready to be inspired, motivated, and equipped with the knowledge to take your leadership journey to the next level.
Hello and welcome to the Let's Talk Leadership podcast. So in this episode of Let's Talk Leadership, we sit down with Joly Zou, who's the co-founder and CEO of Prorizon, to explore her entrepreneurial journey and the leadership lessons she's learned along the way. Joly shares what inspired her to transition from a career in marketing to building a startup focused on sports and youth mental well-being. We'll dive into challenges of fundraising, establishing credibility as a young founder, and how technology can be a force for good. She'll also offer insights into marketing strategies, brand building, and empowering the next generation to thrive under pressure. Whether you're an aspiring entrepreneur, a leader in tech, or passionate about mental health, this conversation is packed with valuable takeaways. So good morning, Joly. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much, Sandra, for having me, and thank you for the introduction.
Oh, you're welcome. I've been really excited about this morning's podcast because I know obviously we've only just kind of connected recently and we've just spoken recently, but I just feel like there's so much diversity in the conversation that you can offer today to our community. So I'm really, really looking forward to it. So first of all, do you want to just give us and the viewers just a little bit of background and context of, I guess, how you've got to where you are today, and then we can delve into more detail.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much. I think you already introduced me and what I do now. So, where I come from, I'm originally from China, and I kind of like
Okay.
started a career in marketing. I came to the UK to study in marketing, and afterwards, I joined a very kind of like big global tech companies like Microsoft and Nokia, leading their global marketing campaigns and global product launches. And then at some point, I started to ask myself the important questions, what I really want in my life, and kind of like a really good seeking things outside, really possibilities outside the corporate life. So that was really driven me into a different path, kind of like into the startup world. So I have been kind of like founding some tech tech startups. I also had some other businesses on the side. I built online communities, and currently I'm working with my co-founder Claire on the startup called Prorizon, which you just introduced, and
Yeah.
we can talk about that later.
Yeah. Fantastic. Brilliant. I think initially it'd be really good to discuss one of the reasons why we're recording this episode now, and I know we've kind of pushed it along quite quickly, is because we've got International Women's Day coming up, and as opposed to celebrating that day one day a year, I've become a very big advocate of supporting other women, other aspirational women to follow in your footsteps, to follow in my footsteps, and to, I guess, really help them feel that it is possible. And at some point for you, you've been inspired to start Horizon, but what was it that kind of, I guess, inspired you, and then what kind of gave you the courage and the confidence to make that leap and jump?
Yeah, I think this is a really great course, and I'm very passionate about it as well. So again, diving back to my own personal journey, as I saying that I grew up in China, which is a highly competitive society, and
Hmm.
unfortunately, in that society, boys are actually preferred over girls. And I grew up, in a very traditional family, carries that, and ever
Same in
since
my
I,
world, my
yeah.
culture.
Really? Oh, that's really unfortunate. I think it's changing a little bit, but still,
Yeah,
kind of like, there's that
we
barrier.
keep chipping away, don't we?
Yeah. And so I think kind of like for me, I always have this thing I need to push myself, constantly push myself to success, to excel, just to get that approval, from my parents, from the society, from the teachers. So there has been quite a lot of pressure when I was, since I was 5, 6 years old, I have learned that if I want approval, I want people to compliment me, I need to put in a lot. So that stress has been always there. And unfortunately, over time, I did sacrifice my own well-being, kind of like, and the part of myself to basically, focusing on the productivity and the performance side. And which unfortunately is led to a burnout when I was, kind of like in my late teens and early 20s, and some unfortunate mental health issues. I think at that point, I really realized how, later on, really, I really realized how critical it is to find that healthy balance. And I think kind of like now what drives me to work on Prorizon is really to tackle this challenge about this elevated stress and the negative consequences it has, on productivity, on health in general, and to really empowering all people, especially young people, to be able to manage and thrive under stress.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. And oh gosh, I feel like that's a whole another topic, another
Yeah.
conversation, another podcast. And I can so like it sounds like such a similar journey to myself as well, which is really interesting. And it also makes you wonder and think how many other women out there have experienced the same challenges. So I absolutely love that. And what I guess the other challenge that you've had as well, which brings me on to my next question, is you haven't come from that sort of traditional background. Either obviously you've had a very successful marketing career, worked with some really big global brands, but it'd be really interesting to talk about how you've managed that transition from marketing to becoming a startup founder and in tech as well. Like it's, complete shift, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely, and it's not a smooth journey, definitely. And as saying that the Prorizon is actually my second tech startup. I did have a startup before COVID, which was in travel tech, and it was just a perfect timing, kind of when we were launching,
Oh
we
gosh.
hit COVID. I know, but I mean, at the beginning, I think when I first dived into the startup world, it was really a mindset shift. So, kind of when I was working for corporate, it was very much I was a part in the corporate machine. No matter how big budget you have, what project that you are working on, you do have your team, and you are either you are leader or not. Is a part, kind of like
Mhm.
you have the resources allocated to you. And switching into the startup world, I think the first challenge is really, you need to manage everything. And a lot of things, marketing is great, but it's only one part of a business. So transiting into managing everything, that was kind of like quite challenging. And I think when I first started, I had this problem that I felt, and I was really frustrated because it seemed the skill I got from corporate wasn't relevant, wasn't applicable because it felt so different. Yeah. And
Yeah, and obviously you've got divisions and departments to pull resources on, haven't you? And you go from that to startup, and I see that in my world all the time. When
yeah,
smaller businesses and startups are hiring people from large corporates, there's always that difficulty in
in
transitioning.
transition. Yeah, I think it's
Yeah.
the shifting the mindset, and also it's an identity thing as well. When I was working in corporate, I go to network, I introduce myself as, kind of like a manager for this, for that. But then when I dived out, it's really about building myself again. When I
Yeah.
go to network, who am I? But it's actually great because it's helped me to look into myself, what really am I? When I introduce myself, I'm a activator, I'm a problem solver. It's not just the brand, the roles that defines you. So, and also to be honest, marketing, when I said at the beginning, it felt my corporate experience wasn't relevant, but later on it did come back very strongly. So for example, marketing has a benefit in the startup world because marketing is all about understanding your target customer. And this is really at the heart of the startup, kind of like carrying through. It's about understanding the needs, the pain points in terms of not just marketing, in terms of building the product, in terms of, managing customers. So it really applies to all aspects. I just think that get through the beginning phase is a mindset shift.
Absolutely. And how did you establish credibility? Because you touched on it, like when you were obviously going to events and things and introducing yourself. It's a completely different ballgame when you've got a brand and especially a big global behind you, and then you're transitioning from that to it's your own startup that no one's heard of, nobody knows yet. How did you build and establish that trust, I guess, with stakeholders, with investors, with and gain that credibility? Like, what did you find worked well for you?
Yeah, I think trust is super important in any world, but especially in startup world. My current startup is a health and sports tech, and I mean personally, I do have some experience working in mental health field. So I was a trustee for a nonprofit that providing comm services. But I think it's very important for me. So I cannot really pretend to be who I'm not, and I cannot, uh, say that I have experiences or expertise in the field that I'm not. The most important thing is really, kind of like my team working with the right people. My co-founder Claire, she's really expert into health. So she's one of the few people in the world who specialize in human adaptation, specifically in sports science. And she's also an aging expert. She's the former chair of British Research Association on Aging. So,
Right.
kind of like partnering with somebody with that expertise is
Yeah.
really gives us the trust. And also, advisors, what I found in the startup world is how very generous people are. If they believe, I think kind of like the key thing is to let people know that I'm really passionate about this.
Yeah.
And once
People
people
buy
believe,
from people, don't they? So
yeah,
it's selling yourself, and
exactly.
like you say, that passion. Um,
Yeah, and
yeah.
especially if they believe in you and you can build that as advisory board with the experts kind of like around you, and that helps us to build the credibility, the trust, kind of like with other people. And I think the
Yeah.
last thing is really just do a lot of research and making sure we bring voices of the target audience with the end users, into the
hmm
conversations. So it's not just from us; it's actually from the people themselves.
Yeah, yeah, fantastic. You're currently raising funding. I think you're in an SEIS round currently, aren't you?
Right.
What's been your biggest lesson that you've learned so far in fundraising that could help others?
Yeah, it's really a tough journey. I think kind of like, especially in the current situation, I'm sure that all the founders that you interview would say the same. Yeah, so we are still raising and trying to close our pre-seed round, which will allow us basically to launch our product, to gain the patents, and to enable us to expand to the US. But I think the biggest lessons I have learned, I think, firstly, is a product market fit. We are at the pre-seed, so still very early stage. But
hmm
because I think in the current situation, investors are trying to minimize the risks, and which is of course is reasonable. And for them, when I first started my first startup, product market fit could mean, you gain some traction in terms of building a large enough community. You have some letters of intent of partnerships. But now in this, when I'm going to fundraising now, what I found product market fit means early revenue. So it must
hmm
translate into that commercial viability. So I think for other founders, the lessons can be learned. I mean, we are learning that lesson now is really focusing on commercialization from day one as well. And I guess it's also kind of like stay grounded because once we go into fundraising, we are basically sending out our decks, talking to many people, and everybody has opinion. Everybody give you feedback, which is of course great that it helps us to improve.
Mm,
But I think when you are getting too much, kind of a lot of feedback, and sometimes they can be contradictory. It's really about the staying grounded to understand what is important, the most important and the core things for us that we are not going to change, but also to understand what are the most valuable feedback that we should be taking on board. And, when we get rejections, it's just, accept what it is and move on very quickly.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I can imagine that being one of the biggest hurdles, because obviously this all takes up time as well, doesn't it? And at the same time, you have to remain focused on day-to-day business. And obviously any rejection can be a bit of a setback, and I guess a mindset thing is kind of being able to draw a line under it, move on to the next one, sort of
Yeah.
thing. So
I
that's,
think you
yeah,
can.
good bit
Yeah,
of
I
advice
do think.
there.
Sorry, I do think
That's
kind of like in a way, although fundraising is really tiring, I don't know which founders love fundraising, but it did teach us lessons. For example, I think the commercialization definitely makes sense. Kind of like for founders, it's important to make sure our product is, generating the true
yeah,
values. So in a
yeah.
way, it does help us to further develop our product as well.
Yeah, yeah. I might just chuck my two pennies in as well, being an investor myself, that typically as well, investors are interested in you having, whether it be an advisor or someone permanently or plans to, and it just goes in line with that commercialization, is having someone that understands the finances or is managing the finance aspect as well, and that makes a proposition much more attractive, I think, as well, does it? And eliminating those risks, I think.
Right.
Yeah. Um, Perfect. And what leadership principles do you live by, and how have they shaped your approach to the current startup?
Yeah, I'm a big believer in authenticity. And so kind of like think being authentic and being empathetic is the
Yeah.
biggest thing in leadership. And also having, building amazing people around me. And not just, micromanage them, giving them tasks to do, but really about encouraging them to learn, to grow by themselves and trust their expertise when they are in the field. So I think that's kind of like the biggest thing. And when how it's impacted us running Prorizon, as I saying, kind of like is ensuring people who work with us, they are firstly truly passionate, that they believe in our mission, and also
Mm.
they. It's not just about working for us. They all have their own needs as well. So when we are working with people, we want to understand what they want in return, for working for us or advising us, whatever that is. And the same really with the stakeholder management with everybody, because coming from marketing, you see that's where the strength comes in. It's really about understanding what they need. And then, for us to have that, it's almost like a partnership rather than an employment
Yeah.
relationship to give them, this mutual benefit.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. Love that. Love the whole authenticity piece. Yeah, firm believer in just, yeah, being as authentic, open, honest, what you see is what you get sort of approach. So moving on, it'd be nice to, I think, talk a little bit more around the purpose of Horizon. Um, and I guess, yeah, understanding a little bit more around where you feel and what you think today's youth um, are at in terms of pressure. They're under more pressure than ever. And how is your new business, going to help them there?
Yeah, I think in today's world, firstly, is the technology is really advanced and is advancing very, very, very fast.
Hmm.
And and it's very much what means is everything is more data driven, is more performance driven, and plus, unfortunately, in our day and age, there's a lot of uncertainties, and young people who are teenagers, they went through the pandemic. There are global wars currently happening, and the economic uncertainties. all of these things is kind of like contributing to kind of like many people, they feel that they are not able to cope with that pressure, cope with that uncertainty. Actually, I think there was some survey saying that over 65% of young people struggle to cope with the pressure to perform. So that's
Wow.
kind of like a, yeah, I know. And
Scary statistics.
yeah, definitely. And it is today, but if we looking at the long term, all of those stress will be leading into long term illnesses. That's why we are facing a chronic, kind of like a pandemic, chronic illness pandemic,
Yeah.
really. And that's kind of like why we founded Prorizon and how we are trying to help. We really want to empowering people to proactively manage their stress and
Mhm.
performance, where a very integrated and personalized approach. So we don't really, kind of people talk about mental health, physical health, but we don't, there is no segregated mental or physical health. It is just health. So what we are trying to do is to develop digital twin technology for mind and body that will deliver helping people to gain more self-understanding. And we are based on that model, we are delivering experiments, tools, and resources to help to give the young people the autonomy to manage their daily life and to make informed decision making on the most important things in their life. And the last thing we also provide them is support. So we have AI agent built in. We have a peer community also providing them access to professionals that when they need. So it's really about giving them not just kind of the autonomy, the data, the understanding, but also giving them access to the support when they need it.
Yeah, fantastic. Love that. It's great to see and hear how technology is being used as a force for good, as opposed to, like you say, it's moving so rapidly and it can be so overwhelming. Even for us. I mean, I've been around technology for 20 odd years, and I get to a point where I'm just like, I don't know where to go with it all at times. So that's fantastic. And what what role do you kind of play within the community in empowering young professionals? Like, is there anything that you'll be doing alongside that to support from a mentorship or community role as well?
Yeah, I mean, personally for me, I think mentorship is so important. Along my journey, I have, luckily enough to have many mentors who helped me both in my career and in my personal development.
Mhm.
And I think kind of like in startups itself is also, we have a lot of communities within startup for founders at different stages. It's about driving the conversations, the collaborations, and also just sharing the struggles that we all share, kind of like in
Yeah.
a sense. And for for our current, target audience, we, in a way, every profession, because we are starting with a quite a niche target audience. We are starting with athletes, and every person in different professions, they all have their unique challenges. And for our users, our early users who are athletes, they have really unique needs and pain points that, potentially the general services and then the general forums don't really apply to them. It's quite important when we did our research and when we did our pilot in our early versions of the product, we hear the feedback that they would like to hear from people, from others who have been there, who had done it,
Yeah.
and who can share the experiences, the stories, and the pains, right?
Absolutely. It's lived experiences, isn't it, that you do always love to hear. Absolutely. And it makes such a big difference to know that you're not alone and there are so many other lived experiences that people are happy to share.
Yeah, that's what I was actually about to get into as well. I think, especially in the athletes and not just athletes, in many environments as well, we celebrate the successes. And when people are struggling, like, in sports, when people are injured or when they are transitioning
Yeah.
out of the sports, they can feel they are very lonely.
Yeah.
And, having that community around them and also a positive environment around them, I think that
Mm,
is really essential.
yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. If you could give one piece of advice to young people that are struggling with performance pressure, and not necessarily just sporting, because obviously it's there. It's there everywhere, isn't it? In any industry. Um, Feel free to give a couple of examples here. What would that be?
I went through this myself, so kind of like I probably would say if I'm advising the younger self,
Mm,
what would my advice be? I would say, firstly, it's very easy to be just focus on the things that are most visible, kind of like the spotlight things. It's
yeah,
really important to zoom out and thinking about the bigger picture. Sometimes when we zoom out, we kind of like actually can realize it's not the end of the world, kind of like this is one episode, maybe important episode, but this is still one episode in our life. And whatever we are going through, it will be contributing to our learnings in the next stage. And I think also when we are in crisis or when we are under pressure, it can feel very chaotic. It's like many things are happening. It feels like we are being pulled away from different parts and we are juggling hundreds of things at the same time. It's quite important. I mean, for me, what worked was really take a pause and break it down and trying to find out what is the most relevant, what are the most relevant things and focus and could make an impact and focusing on this. And I guess is along the journey is about accepting there would be trial and errors. And
yeah,
just to ensure even if there's errors, we learn from it and move on.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think having that reflection time in between all of those stages as well is really important. That there's a lot of us, I know I don't do it enough. Um, and
Yeah, I think a lot of people may think, if you take a pause, it's wasted time,
yeah,
but it's not.
I do. I have such a big issue with that. Absolutely.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I think kind of like when I was learning this is it is crucial, kind of like really to reflect and to learn. And if we don't do that, it will unfortunately lead into a burnout. It will lead
Yeah.
into consequences that will I think when I had a crisis, it took me like 9 months to recover. Is it
Wow.
wasted of time to spend maybe 10
Yeah.
minutes or sometime a day to reflect on that, or you'd rather wait for that burnout to happen and
Mhm.
you need to just spend time to recover from that.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. Burnout as well is such a huge topic.
Yeah,
Another conversation is that one as
yeah,
well.
definitely.
Perfect. What would you say that from your experience? Obviously, you're on your second startup. First one, I didn't know that you'd when we initially spoke, I didn't really know much about that, and I can think there's a lot of us that have been hit by the situation regarding COVID within our businesses, and it's such awful timing there. So I'm sure you've got some sort of mistakes and things that you would have done differently to be able to share. So what would you say are the most common mistakes startups make when building, but more specifically around brand and marketing strategies? That I think is obviously it's important for every business, but I think more so for startups.
Yeah. It's quite a difficult question because I think all startups different and it's really based on, what you do. For some of them, brand credibility is definitely the key,
Yeah,
that they do need to have a clear brand strategy very early on. But I think for many, especially at the early stage, a lot, I think, especially coming from marketing background, it's very easy for me to dive into, building a brand and straight away. But
hmm,
at that stage, I discovered marketing is really about dive in and truly understand the customers and users. It's not necessarily about, the visual element, the content element. It's very much about, the research element and linking that towards the product. So I think
right,
that's kind of like the part I learned. And I saying that is also not afraid of change because coming from big corporate, kind of like changing the marketing strategy, changing brand, it feels like a big thing. But as a
yeah,
startup, honestly, I mean, we don't really, unless that you are established in the market, you don't afraid to make changes. If you think this is not what the market needs, this doesn't apply anymore, just make the change. And I said that it's a trial and error as well. Yeah, and I think the final thing is really marketing and the marketing strategy planning and the go to market goes hands in hand. It's
hmm,
not just about marketing research or kind of like branding strategies. It very much goes into the business models. So, for example, I think it's quite important to to understand what our metrics are, what we are tracking, how that's influencing the whole business, and to drive the whole business development, and not just focusing on growing your social media followers,
Yeah. Yeah.
on those things, but
Well, that's the
actually
sort of thing that just you can kind of end up getting yourself lost in and really distracted by. And like you say, if you haven't looked at actual outcomes and what you're trying to attract and drive, how do you measure the the deliverables? How do you measure the benefits and the outcomes to the business? You can't.
exactly.
Okay, cool, fantastic. And you're obviously also a content creator, as well, and obviously that's you've had a lot of experience. That's the background that you've kind of come from. How's that helped you build the brand and the community with Prorizon?
Yeah, I probably haven't shared this with you, Sandra, but I do have my own YouTube channel. So it is
Okay,
on the topic around the feminism in China. So it's targeted
right,
Chinese people. It's in Chinese. I also
yeah,
have built online communities before. So for my past previous startup in travel, I actually built the biggest meetup in London, and
wow.
also had some online communities which is focusing on this information. I know it's a bit random, but I do have
No,
the
no, no.
experience.
It's all relevant, definitely. I'd be really interested. So, how did you've just said you built the biggest meetup in London? Was that an in person
Yeah,
meetup?
that was an
Not.
in-person one. So I think that was a part of validating my assumption. So when I first started my, the travel tech
Yeah.
business, it was about helping women to independently travel and explore their own communities. And
Mhm.
I didn't really know whether there was a need or not. So I was using Meetup really as a testing bed, trying to, firstly, to see whether there's interest, whether there are enough people to sign up. And secondly, running events and meetups helped me to get to my really target user, to hear from
Yeah.
them, to understand them, to gain the real feedback. So that's I think kind of that's what I would say I did quite well in the first startup. And as I saying, we keep circling back. For startup, it's all about being where our users and our customers are, right? It's about driving.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's about driving that organic conversations, and from that conversation, not just user interviews, that we can find out what their real pain points are,
Mm.
what languages that you use. All of those things helps us into our messaging and the branding strategy later on. Kind of like how using the words, using the language that as they are speaking. So yeah, and at Prorizon, we do run workshops. We have built early tester groups, and we also participate on other online forums. As I say, to understand them, to join the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. Fantastic. Love that. It seems like a part of your kind of why and sort of purpose is really like the adding value as well to others, and building communities is really important, which is great, and that just adds to the whole kind of passion around the cause as well, doesn't it, and strengthens the value there.
Definitely.
Um, so if you had to grow an audience, or customer base from scratch today, as a lot of kind of new younger founders in today's world are experiencing currently, I think it'd be really interesting to share what the kind of first few steps would be, that you would take around that from your that you've experienced.
Yeah, it's a good question. It's also a little bit, difficult question. I think kind of like if I can reflect back and thinking what we did well and what we didn't do well, I would say the
Hmm.
first step is always research. So I think a lot of people may have this idea, think that they have find the perfect solution, but take actually a step back and go into research into the current market. I would say, kind of like what are the solutions already there? Why do they work? Why they don't work? What is the competitive analysis there? I think that is the first step. And after that, I would say it's not the solution. It's about trying to get more research done, but that research would be more focusing on understanding the target users, kind of like who are we serving, and
Hmm.
understanding what their needs are. At this stage, I think it's a lot about talking to them, as I saying, kind of like doing the primary research. And then I guess kind of like on the next step following that is trying to see from, that is a big group of audience. Do we have a specific segment? Do we target at a specific pain points? And can we, if we do, and really deep dive into that to understand more about those pain points, how are they currently solving it? Because honestly, if somebody say they are feeling the pain of something, but they are not solving it, they are not actively looking for
Yeah.
solutions, that actually is not a pain. That potentially is a good to have, but it's not a pain. So yeah, I would say those are the first steps that I would take.
Yeah, absolutely. Love that. And I think that's great advice. And it just kind of reinforces, I think most people kind of know that it's to start on that research step,
Yeah.
but a lot of people skip that stage, don't they? Because as entrepreneurs and founders, we're quite quick to, we've got this great idea, let's just go straight in, jump in and quite often don't want to do the really hard work, which is that initial research stage.
Yeah, and I don't think it's actually a one-off thing. It's also continuous, right? It's kind of like
Yeah.
once we have, we are building the product, we need to keep going back to the users to find whether this is still what they want. The market change
Mhm.
as well,
Yeah.
and yeah, so that's where the community and what we talked about earlier. That's why it's become really important. Building a
Yeah.
group of users who support you, who give you feedback, that's really helps you in all sorts of things in terms of product development as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. Brilliant. So my last question for you is, what's next for you and Prorizon? What's kind of what's big vision for the future, and yeah, and also actually that's not my last question. I've got another question, but it's
Okay.
don't worry, it's a nice one at the end.
Okay. I'll start with myself. So personally, as I
Mhm.
saying that I'm really passionate about helping young people to grow. And I do have this YouTube channel that, as I mentioned before, so I want to keep developing that community and to
Yeah,
inspire young Chinese women and, to bridge gaps. And
fantastic.
next for us at Prorizon, we have actually some important milestones coming. We have product launch coming in April. It's a public launch. And we are geared up for commercialization, kind of discussing. I'm currently at Mobile World Congress, discussing some exciting partnerships and commercial opportunities. And in the longer term this year, we do want to expand to the US market.
Yeah.
And I think in terms of the bigger picture, when we think about our vision, is really to redefine health, not just
Mhm.
mental and physical health segregated, but it's about bringing in precision health management platform that will give everyone the tools that currently maybe only few, elite Olympic level athletes they have
Yeah.
today, so that they can achieve sustained performance and also long-term health in their life.
Fantastic. Brilliant. Love that. Um, Last question is, is there anything else, any kind of other advice that you would give to fellow founders, early stage founders, that's kind of, or any advice that you've been given that's kind of like stuck in your head and you think it's really important to share? Any kind of last words, I guess?
Yeah, I think kind of like for me, it's maybe my personality or kind of like my cultural background where I come from. When I first started in this space, I have this strong need to prove myself. And that
Mm.
basically means do everything by myself. So if there's something I don't know how to do, I try to, struggle by myself. But what I have learned in the past years is really looking for help.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing I have learned. And
Ask for the help.
yeah, ask for the help, and it's true demonstration of strength. Going out to say I don't know about, I don't have experience in this area. I'm looking for experts who can spare 15 minutes, half an hour, have a call with me. Please give me some directions. That
Mhm.
is the real strength, rather than just trying to cover it up and the suffering by myself. And also the community. Really, I was just surprised by how supportive the community is. I belong to several groups, and when I do need, ask help, and these people I have never heard about, and people I don't
Mhm.
know, they do generally just want to help you. And so not afraid to ask for help, ask for mentorship. There's a lot of people like to see
Yeah.
other people to grow, to elevate other people. So that's potentially, my personal biggest learning.
Yeah, fantastic. Do you mentor other people as well?
Yeah, I
Is that
do.
something you've
I
done?
volunteered before at some kind of like nonprofits, and if
Okay.
there's, as I saying that if there's other startup kind of like founders or really just anybody who reach out to me for advice, I always make myself available.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. Brilliant. Love that. I've really, really enjoyed our conversation today. I feel like we've got through a lot of really valuable content. I really appreciate you being so honest, open, and sharing your experiences, because that's what, we touched on it in the conversation today. Those lived experiences are so valuable to other people, and to help others, build their careers and businesses, and it's obviously all adding to strengthen the ecosystem. So really appreciate it, really enjoyed it. Thank you very much, and look forward to releasing this podcast over the next few days and sharing it with the community.
Oh, thank you so much, Sandra. I enjoyed it very much as well, and I hope I provided some useful content and useful information.
You did, absolutely.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Take
Thank
care.
you. Bye
See you
bye.
later. Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Let's Talk Leadership podcast. I hope you found it as insightful and inspiring as I did. A huge thank you to our guests for sharing their experiences and wisdom. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your network. It really helps us reach out to more leaders like you. If you're interested in joining me on the podcast or have someone in mind who you think would be a great fit, feel free to reach out and get in touch, as I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep leading with purpose, and remember, leadership is all about learning, growing, and giving back. Take care, and I'll see you on the next episode.